Cool.
Wow. Okay. Everyone, welcome back to season 2, episode 2 of the podcast, Yours Truly. I'm here today with Ian Ratliff. Ian, born and raised in Nashville. He started real estate in 2018. And I think I'm going to let him finish the story, but he bought one house, got his real estate license. And since then, everything else is history. He has done more than 200 transactions that include him as a realtor, as a flipper, as a developer. And he's kind of a jack of all trades. But when I see him out there, he is the master of behavioral economics, because that's what he also mastered in college. So we're going to let him talk more about that. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm
Good?
a little tired.
Yeah. I know you mentioned you weren't able to sleep last night.
Yeah, not too much.
Yeah. Nothing crazy. He was just helping out a friend.
Yeah,
Guys,
yeah. Friend got into a wreck, so I sat on the side of the road with him for a while.
Huge shout out to Lagos Creative. Easton's the best. Alex is the best. And now we're gonna dig in. Again, Ian, thanks for coming here. My whole reason why I invited you, and I'm wanting to invite more people that are real in our industry in Nashville, is because we see so much fluff on social media nowadays. Is that, and I'll share a little bit about myself. I don't know if I told you this. I used to think in my early 20s and mid 20s that, if I'm not a billionaire, I'm a loser.
Sure.
Right? My conditioning and social media and looking at other people and just constantly comparing myself with them. Mm-hmm. I was always upset or not happy with myself no matter how much success I had. We had really good projects we flipped, really good wholesale deals, 6-figure deals. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, what's next? And over the last year, things changed for me. And then I started to see more real people who are doing really well and living really well, very intelligent, very smart like you. And at the same time, they're moving at their own pace. Because we talked about this last time when we got coffee. Yeah. And I got to hear your story, and I was like, man, this guy has a plan, and his plan is landing really well.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. So let's dig into more on how you got started, because I bet a lot of people listening to this are going to be in that boat where they're either about to get started or they just did. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's go back to 2018.
Yeah. Well, I can first say, I guess, advice to people is reach out to other people who are doing better than you, because I probably did a lot of things wrong and caused myself a lot of headaches that probably could have been avoided. Yeah. So 2018, I was working in IT infrastructure sales and selling to all the private prisons in America, Nissan, Calsonic, any of their plants, any sort of back-end infrastructure, fiber optics, door locking hardware, security infrastructure, DAS wireless, all of that stuff, commercial grade data networks, essentially. So that's what I was doing prior to this.
Something that no one really ever thinks about, right?
Yeah. So I was selling to the contractors who are, laying Google Fiber. So Google Fiber was my client, and I sold them all the fiber that's in Nashville.
Wow.
And it was at a terrible margin, by the way. I made no money. It was pre-negotiated at I don't even know what the margin was, but it was tiny.
You didn't even control that.
No, not at all. The company was like, this is pre-negotiated, you get the sales. And I was like, all right, great, that's fine. But honestly, I was going through the process of buying my first house, and it took me a while because, one, I didn't even have credit till I was 24 or 25 years old. Never had a credit card, never had a car payment, nothing. So I was just worked and paid cash for everything. And when I was at that job, I tried to go get a loan, and they're like, awesome, you have savings, you have no credit. Good luck. Yeah. They're like, come back next year. So I started learning a little bit about how that works and how to build your credit, and got my credit straight. Found a realtor at the time through my mom, who was recommended to me. We searched for almost a year, and I think he probably thought I wasn't serious, honestly. And but I just knew what I was looking for, and I wasn't the typical home buyer who's I just want a home to live in. I was really dead set on finding something even with the fact that I was getting a in-house portfolio loan through a credit union that didn't. It was FHA requirements basically, so it was you're going to have to be able to live in the home. It's got to be up to snuff. You've got to have heat, air, all these things.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How did that seed got planted in you to where you're like, I don't want a normal home. I want something that I can fix up and I can have equity in?
Yeah. I think it was just always something I was interested in. I mean, even when I was younger, big fan of like Peter Schiff and Thomas Sowell and a bunch of other economists, and just looking at that as a whole in my background there, real estate just always seemed like something that was smart to own, and I just always had an affinity towards it. So it wasn't really like, someone said, hey, you should go buy real estate. It was just kind of through, I guess, chain of events.
Did you think, or did you know at the time that what it would grow into moving like 6 years?
Not really. So I never wanted to be a realtor or broker. That was never my interest from the get-go. But when I found the house that I ended up buying, it was in East Nashville, right off Dickerson Road, on Hillside Road. Yeah, 3119 Hillside Road. And I closed on that house for like $145,000. I got 100% financing.
Wow.
It's funny because the bank even called me like right before closing, and it had baseboard heat. And they're like, hey, the appraiser didn't note whether or not the baseboard heat works. Does it work? And I was like, oh, yeah, it definitely works. It did not work.
Yeah.
Like, nothing worked in the house. I just told the bank, I'm like, yeah, it's got to work. Like, why would it not?
Yeah.
And so there was no central heat and air in the house. It was absolutely horrible, like total shithole.
And the bank funded 100%.
Yeah.
How did you find that product, or how did you find that loan? Because nowadays people are like, hey, how do we find the money? People always go towards hard money, which is great for some scenarios, right?
Sure.
How did you find that product?
It was just a first-time homebuyer loan through a local credit union. So Ascend Federal Credit Union. I banked there at the time. I still bank there. But yeah, they basically it was a 5-in-1 ARM loan. It funded 100% of purchase, no second rider or down payment rider. It was a true 100% financing, fixed for 5 years. Then it would adjust after that. And then I had some savings set aside for closing costs. So I basically cashed out my 401k when I left my job shortly after this. So I was like a month after buying the house, I'm sitting at my job. I think this was probably April or May of 2018. I can't really remember exactly when I bought the house and when I left my job, but I think it was maybe mid-May, if I remember correctly, because I had to be out of my current place by like end of June or something. So I really had to hustle on getting the house in shape. But first thing I did was go in, pull all the carpet out of the place. I thought it was like dirt on the floor, and it ended up being like congealed cat pee and shit. And like,
oh man,
I had to get a respirator and went in there. And like, I did all this work myself. So like, first of all, I got HVAC installed, hired someone to do that, hired someone to do the windows, and then all the interior was me and one other guy. And so I basically tore all that out, refinished the hardwoods myself, fixed the drywall, painted it, pulled all the base and doors out of it, and then just got like one room ready to basically live in. And so I moved all my stuff into that one bedroom. I basically just had a mattress on the floor, and then like gutted the kitchen myself, gutted the bathroom, tore it all out. I was like throwing stuff in my truck and just taking it to the dump, like before I even knew you could get a dumpster and make your life easier.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I was just really trying to save money, but I was doing that at night while I was at my job. And so I would work from like 8 to 5, 8 to 6, get off, go home, change clothes, go to the job site, work there till 1 or 2 in the morning, get up, do it all over again. And so I did that for about 5 or 6 weeks.
That's real hustle.
And one day my head just exploded. It was like a Wednesday. My boss called me in his office. He's like, you're only 98% of plan year to date. And I was like, this is fucking bullshit. Why am I even here? Yeah. I just remember looking outside. It was so nice out, and I'm sitting in this fucking cubicle. And hopefully it's okay if I curse.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Please do. Please do. Yeah.
It's just part of it. But they after that, I went and sat at my desk, and it's like 10:30 in the morning. And I just remember thinking, like, why am I here? I don't actually know what I'm doing here. And I literally just went home. I called my mom, and I was like fuming from the conversation for some reason. I was just like, who's this guy think he is? Like, he's just going to try to tell me that, what 2% is that big of a deal right now. And like their target, gross profit was like 18%. I was doing like 32 or 33% at the time. So I was just like, this is all just corporate bullshit. And so called her, was like, I'm coming over right now. I'm quitting my job. I'm never going back. And she was like, whoa, like, are you okay? Like, you just bought a house. Are you okay? I was like, no, I'm serious. I'll figure it out. So I went over there, chatted with her. I was like I said, fuming. So our conversation, she kind of calmed me down. I was like, like give them 2 weeks, like
take your time.
Yeah. She's like, you never know if like you're going to need their help in the future. Like do it the right way.
Yeah.
And also my godfather at the time worked for the company. She was like do right by him. And I was like, okay, that's really sound advice. So I sat there, wrote up my notice. That was a Wednesday. That Friday I turned it in, said, here's my 2 weeks.
Let's go. Dude, moms are the best.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Moms are the best. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to give a big shout out to her because she's awesome.
My mom's basically my advisor right now. Like where my relationship with my mom was different 5-6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then she got on her spiritual path. She got on her, I want to say, personal self-development path.
Yeah.
And I consult with her on so many things, and she will come up with these ideas. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think of this. I don't know if anyone I know can think of this, but you're thinking of this. That's fantastic. But
right.
Yeah, let's go with the story. I love that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can kind of wrap it up. That basically I quit the job. While I was buying the house, I actually went through my real estate licensing courses online just to educate myself about the process. I had no intentions of getting a license, but then that just seemed like at the time the kind of like path of least resistance for me, since I'd been in sales before. I kind of saw what my realtor did, and he wasn't really consulting people on like the long-term value of real estate. He was just kind of, someone there to open doors and push paperwork. And I was just like, what, if I can buy a house and do this, I'm sure I can help other people do it. And if I can even make, at the time I was like, if I can make half of my salary, which I think was like $47,000 a year.
Oh man.
I was just like, that's cool with me.
That's cool with me.
And so I just went and drove Uber and Lyft for about 6 months. I got my license August 1st, 2018. And then my first couple deals were that December, I think. And then that December I sold, I don't know, around 600 some thousand. It was like 15 grand in commissions. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
And so the next year I flipped the house, sold it that following November. And that was crazy. I ran myself down to the wire. When I say I did everything wrong, like I ran up every credit card I could for materials, like did all the work myself, took way too long. The day before I sold the house, I had $63.21 in my bank account and woke up with like 83 grand.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God, it worked.
Let's go.
Like, how do I do this again? And so ever since then, I mean, that's essentially the stair step I did. And then went and got my first flip loan from the bank and found a for sale by owner, bought another one, met a couple business partners, started doing stuff with them. And it's just kind of grown from there naturally.
Dude, the amount of similarities we have in our story, I don't know if we ever talked about how I got started. The amount of similarities we have is wild. And I want to emphasize on that more because I feel like a lot of newer people I talk to are like, hey, I want this very quickly. I want it to work really fast. What's the best thing for me to do? What's the best thing for me to do?
Yeah.
The best thing to do is just to do it.
Yeah.
Because you said you quit your job. You drove Uber and Lyft for a little bit. I quit my job late 2019, worked with my family for a little bit, worked in Florida for a little bit, basically broke even. Whatever I made very little.
Sure.
Whatever. Got my license early 2020. COVID hits.
Oh, sure.
Did not make my first paycheck in real estate until July, and I made $1,200. I remember that. It was...
Yeah. Was it like a rental or something, or
it was
small
not,
land deal?
No, it was a smaller house, like 200-some thousand, but we had to cut our commissions to make it work for the buyer and the seller.
Sure. Yeah.
I cut my commission, the listing agent cut her commission. There. So we had to do that. And then coming down to the wire, I had some deals closed a few months after that, and then I instantly bought my first flip.
Yeah.
As soon as I bought that, my bank account, whatever I had saved up, I think it was closer to 50, went to half. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then we did the first, how you do the first draw part. And I was like, this is fucked up. Like, what am I doing next? And the week before that house sold, that was in December. Yeah, the week before that house sold, AT&T cut me off.
Oh, shit.
I don't hate them, but I didn't pay that bill, right?
Right.
And I was like, okay, I have enough dog food. Yeah. Because I have 3 dogs. I have enough human food. Yeah. Because I think the deal was closing Thursday or Friday or something like that. Thursday. Because I remember getting that text that, hey, we sent from my title company, we sent the wire.
Yeah.
And it did, sure thing, same thing happened. And that deal closed and all that money came back.
Yeah.
So going through that process, I still have this burner phone I bought from Walmart like all the $40 I could scrape.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I gotta have some kind of communication.
Right.
Get
a track phone or something.
Yeah, get something. I still have that phone. But no, that's what essentially beginning can look like for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And people don't understand. People are like, well, we need this, and that, and we need to make a bunch of money immediately without doing any of the work. I think right after 2020, 2021, when rates were really low, people thought that, oh, we can delegate everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's easy to outsource stuff when you're borrowing money at low interest rates.
At next to nothing.
Yeah.
But that's such a great story. So let's talk about the compounding of that, right? Because you bought this one house.
Yeah.
And I was also Ubering and lifting and all of that during like mid to late 2020.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to do my first house. I was waking up at 4, Ubering from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Yep.
And then I was doing real estate during the day. And then I would go Uber again from, I want to say 5 p.m. until 10, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
I was dating someone at the time. Shout out to her. Like, she was very helpful because like she was home with the dogs.
Yeah.
You know? But the compounding power, because people think that, oh, if we just do one deal now, then when am I going to make it, or when am I going to get there? Right.
Sure.
2019, you sold that house. Yep. What happened right after that?
I bought the next one pretty quick. I think it was within a couple months. I don't remember exactly when, but maybe 3 or 4 months later, I found a for sale by owner in Madison. Did the same thing. Did a lot of the work myself. Demo, hardwoods, trim, hanging the cabinets, etc. But after that deal, I was traveling a lot at the time, and it's funny. I met my business partner kind of in a happenstance way. He's a lot older than me, and we own a company called Tortuga Capital, and he just randomly reached out to me like on Facebook or email, and I can't remember what it was, but it was so funny because at the time, like, I didn't really know who he was. He came into our office. He worked for or ran a property management company at the time, and I remember getting this like very vague, like 2-sentence email from him that was basically just like, hey, I see what you're doing. Looks like you're doing well, finding distressed properties. I'd be interested to talk to you about something. And that's kind of all it was. And I was just like, what is this? Like, who is this guy? And so at first I'm thinking like, this is spam, or like, this is like, I don't know. Like, I don't know who these people are. At the time, like, I do a lot of social media now, but at the time I was like, if people reach out to me randomly or like they try to message me on social media, I'm like, fuck off. Like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, like, you got to be a scammer basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're like online.
Yeah.
Which has totally changed now with the world. But I mean, even just 5 years ago, I was so just like at arm's length from any of that. And so I asked a couple people, one of them being the owner of Blackwell Realty. I said, hey, do you know him? And he's like, yeah. And I said, he reached out to me and wanted to talk about something. And I ended up taking a meeting with him. He said he'd be interested in partnering. I said, do you think he would be a good partner? And he's like, yeah, he'd be a good partner. Little did I know that anytime John has been sued, it's my business partner's wife who defends him in court.
Oh, so they were tight, right? They were close.
Like, but they don't do business together.
Okay.
So like, and they don't do like a lot of speculative real estate. Like my partner and his wife don't. But he wanted someone who could like go run the jobs and, kind of saw what I was doing through Facebook and whatnot. And we've done really well since, but we flipped that one. After our initial conversation, I bought another one in October of 2019, I think. And then in 2020, we bought 4 multifamily, if you include this kind of non-conforming one we bought in Clarksville that we sold on owner terms and still hold today, amongst another 5 or 6 flips. I think that year, like if you include all the units, like it was like 23 units total that we rehabbed, and 10 of those we still hold today. The rest of them we just sold off. But yeah, ever since then, like just kind of slowly with the sales business, I don't generally do a lot of marketing with that. It's been a lot of word of mouth and just kind of like every year, maintaining relationships with people. And luckily there's a lot of people out there who trust my opinion now and ask me for advice, which is great. And eventually that turns into business. So
I agree. And I also think like every time we've talked, you can tell when someone is trying to sell you every time you have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And when someone is just trying to help you with whatever you need help with and not trying to sell you.
Yeah.
I think that's a big differentiator, because even if you don't recognize that, you can still feel it in your gut.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, you know what? I had this conversation. It was great, but this kind of sounded like this person was trying to sell me on whatever they're selling.
Right.
Versus just giving them the black and white info and kind of nudging them in the right direction.
Right.
Without actually trying to gain something immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I've always handled my business and sales in general. Every sales job I've ever had is kind of like, you know, how can I help you? You know, what are you struggling with, or what are your goals here? And then if you need advice, I'm here as a resource. Like, it doesn't actually matter to me if anyone buys a house. Like, if you want to rent forever, I don't fucking care. That's fine. Like, go rent forever. That's cool. I mean, if that's comfortable for you and like that works for you, do it. I think that people are doing themselves a disservice by doing that, because if they've never bought a house, they've never experienced the power of having equity in something and ownership over something. So there's like a mindset shift that happens when you do that first deal and then the second deal. And especially when you're getting into 5, 10, 20 deals, like now you don't think about it, right? Like you're like, does this work on paper? You know, is this something that's in a good area? Is this something that I want to do that I can make money on and that makes sense? And you're not really thinking about like anything else other than that. Whereas people buying their first home, it's very emotional. Like they're not going to be like me most of the time. Maybe 1 out of 20 people is going to be like me, who's like, no, I want something to improve. And most people just want something livable. And that's totally fine too.
So this is a broader question, but I want to know when you started flipping houses, right? And when you first got into the realization of like, oh, this is what I kind of do now. Like, this is my business, flipping houses, building new houses.
Yeah.
How has your mindset shifted from the first couple of years to this last year? I know the market has changed, but aside from the market, how do you approach the business and how do you look at things than you did in the beginning? Like some major changes, because I can't pinpoint them. You can, because they're in your business. Sure. So it could be one thing, it could be 2 or 3.
Yeah. I think I've had this conversation with both my business partner and a couple of other people recently about when I started in the business, and rates were, I don't know, mid 4s at the time. This is before they really dropped. So like I saw negotiations between buyers and sellers, and it was before the, you know, massive exodus of California, New York, Chicago, all these other places to come here. So you didn't have this, you know, ramping up of pricing constantly. And I like the market we're in now. It's much more stable, which is good. I mean, that being said, I've lost money on 2 flips this year, which it is what it is. Like, you're going to have your winners and losers. And if you can't stomach that, then go do something else.
100%.
But when I started, you know, my mindset was like, how do I just make a living, right? I wasn't actually focused on building a business. It was like, okay, this is cool. Like, I can kind of make my own schedule. Even if I have to work more hours, that's okay with me. If I can make what I made at my job previously, then that's a win. And then when I started making more than that, you know, like I said, I made $47,000 a year, and then you get an $80,000 wire. You're like, that's kind of crazy. Like, I've never seen that money in my bank account before. And so that was, you know, the sale of the first house was the first time that I was like, okay, this can work. Now, how do I not fuck it up? So immediately I took, you know, 50,000 of that and bought the second one. And those first few, you know, I didn't have the resources, and I feel like there's a good crew of people in town right now. And, you know, you're one of those people, and there's a lot of other individuals that we've associated with or see at similar events. And I love seeing how many people are like collaborating on stuff and how helpful they are to each other. Because I was kind of on my own little island for a while when I got started. And also on the sales side of things was just like, okay, cool. Just of the mindset, all right, like, how do I bring on customers and like, you know, help advise them and build the sales side of the business at the same time going and, you know, sanding hardwoods myself, which was just, I got to a point where it was not the efficient use of my time. And I realized if I can focus more on the sales side of things, I can probably do more flips. I can probably do more construction, but I need to take a step back from, you know, being the guy who goes to Home Depot and picks up the lumber.
Yeah, 100%.
So around that 2019, 2020 mark is where that kind of started to change. And then even now, over the past year, my mindset's changed a lot because I'm about to open my own brokerage.
Yep.
So August 1st, I'm opening my brokerage. It's just going to be me and 3 or 4 other people. It'll be kind of kept small for a while until I get things up and running. But my goal there is to offset some of that day-to-day now. So the first-time home buyers, just your typical home seller, no one who's really looking to reinvest, buy rentals, build. Ultimately I want to continue to work with investors and then build a pipeline for deals there too. And offset, some of the time consuming things like going to show 9 houses on a Saturday.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I can give that to an agent who I train and coach and then sit with them, through their sales process, then it'll be good for them. It'll be good for me. And then hopefully I can focus more on the things that I like to do. So,
and they can also coach someone else a few years down the road and do exactly what you're doing and make the team bigger.
Yeah.
A big realization I had a few months ago was that we currently are in the, we're in history. We're like history in the making. And we read, it also was sparked by, I started reading a lot over the last couple of years. And I'm reading about all these people and, we read about these great times that they were doing this, they were doing that. But at the time, they were just normal people doing whatever they knew was best to do. Right. We're exactly in that time period now for our careers, for Nashville, for the people we work with, people we help. Yep. And I think sometimes we fail to realize that. And the more we realize that we are history in the making, the more we're going to enjoy it versus thinking about, oh, I'm going to be happy when I get to this point, or I'm going to be more satisfied when I get to this point. Whereas to your process, it was just like one step at a time. Then you get to the second step. Then you see, okay, the steps are getting wider. Then you get to another step rather than trying to paint a really big picture. And, if you're standing on the ground floor trying to get to the 90th floor and you got to do stairs and you look all the way up, that's scary. Yeah. But if you just do one floor at a time, half a floor, one stair at a time, it's so much more easier because you don't know how big something can grow if you just be in the now and do it right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's all the little stuff you do day to day. My agents who are newer, I told them, I'm like, the action breeds more action, right? Like activity breeds activity. So anything you do today, and to your point earlier about new people trying to do too much or, trying to like make money fast, anything you think you're going to do is probably going to take twice as long. So like if you think it's going to take you a year, it's probably going to take 2. Yeah. If you think it's going to take you 5 years, it's probably going to take 10. And that's not to say that you can't do it in that time. It's just you haven't realized the hurdles or dealt with the hurdles that are going to come yet. So your viewpoint's a little skewed, So doing those day-to-day things, like if you do something today, like you're probably going to see that come to fruition in 6 months. And if you do that consistently for 6 months, you'll see that explode over a year or 2 years. And so just those little things you can do every day. I mean, those little stairs are what everyone should do and focus on, because as soon as you get out of that and you're like, I want to make $1 million. Okay, well, you still got to work backwards from, all right, do you have 10,000? Do you have 100,000? You know, what's your plan there? Yeah. You gotta be able to reverse engineer your way on whatever you're trying to get to. Yeah. So one of the questions that people ask, because I posted on my Instagram, I was like, I have the legend Ian on my podcast. Dude, you are a legend. Because I see a lot of businesses, I coach a lot of people, and I see a lot of businesses on their progression, and I see what they are, what they aren't doing, and like how they're growing. So when I see successful businesses who have made it past the 5-year mark, that's a big deal, because I know so many people in the real estate world, mortgage world, who are not doing that since 2022. Right around 2022, they just like completely started to do different things. And I think it's a big feat to like you're a real business if you're able to go through the ups and downs and not just be there in the ups and give up and leave when the downturn comes, because it's all like the ups and downs are going to happen.
I mean, the ups are easy. So I mean, when money's flowing freely and you're not going to be as focused on processes. You're not going to be as focused on relationships. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. It's like, I take a lot of calls and a lot of meetings with people who I know aren't ready to do anything right now. But, if you call me and you're like, hey, I've got this friend, would you be down to sit down with them? Like, I'd say 99% of the time I say yes at some point. I'm like, sure, we can have coffee on this day. And I think a lot of doing a lot of that, people get so short-sighted. And if you just think about the fact that you don't really know who that person is, like, they might think about that one time you sat down with them and gave them advice and call you a year later or 2 years from now, or call you and say, hey, my mom needs help with something, So I think that's something that everyone should focus on. But during those up times, a lot of people, it's hard when you're, slammed every day.
I feel like we humans are extremely short-sighted, and we can be farsighted. We can think of the bigger picture. We can't think of what's going to happen. And it comes down to the same thing. We overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's the relationships that we build that actually get to that next level. And what are we giving?
Yeah.
A big thing. So we were watching this this documentary, and I don't remember the name of it. It was on real estate. And one of the people were like, I'm just going to do what's best for me. And 4 years ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But now I'm thinking, oh, if you're only interested in what's best for you, then maybe you should just not be in a business where you work with other people. Because we are in a business where we have to think about what's best for the other person and what are we giving out into the world, rather than just being self-centered. I mean, it's such a constrictive way, if that's even a word. So like, it feels so contracted, right? If I'm just looking at myself versus if I'm open and I'm thinking about other people and I'm thinking about helping them the right way and doing it right, versus just, it almost being self-centered by only doing what's best for me.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great point where you said that you would still meet with people, because that's kind of that's what we need. That's what we want nowadays. When I hired my coach, we went months with just like, hey, let's hop on a call. I need help with this. Hey, let's hop on a call. I need help with this. It takes a lot of time for that pressure, not pressure to build, that relationship to build, and for the imbalance of like giving value and then taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we fail a lot in terms of like giving that value before we start to take it. We want to take as much as we can and give as little as possible.
Yeah.
But I think the people who actually make it big are the ones, from what I have seen, even just here in Nashville, the ones that have given a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of free advice, free calls, free this, and helped other people get successful. Because one of my good buddies, Mike Taravella, shout out Mike, he does comedy in his free time.
Okay.
But he's a multifamily operator. Do you know Mike? No. He's very sharp, very intelligent, just very systems oriented. When I put my money into multifamily, I'm going to be giving it to Mike. Like, it's just a no-brainer for me. But he responded to a question one time of how do you get rich? How do you get rich in multifamily? He was like, make your investors rich.
Yeah.
It's such a simple formula.
Yep.
Because, and you said your business has been growing through word of mouth mostly. I personally feel like word of mouth is the absolute best way for any business to grow.
Yeah.
Because if you do right by one person, that one person is going to tell 10 other people.
Yeah.
And if you just stay normal and neutral and just do what's required, you can help 100 people and they're not going to tell nobody, because it's just normal.
Well, and this is just my viewpoint on the industry as a whole, but like insurance, mortgage, real estate agents, like we're one of the most marketed to industries in the world, but two, honestly, the barriers to entry are relatively low, so a lot of people get into it, and there's not a lot of transparency around, how many deals has someone done? Like, are they, sufficient in their business? Like, do they actually know what they're talking about? That's kind of a hard thing for consumers to discern. And there's a very high majority of people out there who are like, I hate realtors, right? And so I've always tried to take the approach on the backside of that and just constantly try to give people advice and value. And one of the things that really irritates me, I hate the saying like rent's 100%. I'm like, oh my God, like can you like get any more like cheesy and salesy? You know? Like I hate hearing that from mortgage brokers or whatever. Like interest rates are going to drop. Like rent's 100%. Like, well, yeah, but if they're paying $800 a month and their mortgage is going to be $2,800, like why would someone do that? Unless they're really invested in a long-term plan. And most people renting are invested in a 1-year plan.
You mean rent's 100%? What does that mean?
Like you're not getting any equity, right? So like you're paying 100% to the other landlord, right? Yes. Whereas like your mortgage, you're maybe paying down the note or building some equity in there. Yeah. But I've just heard that term so many times. I'm just like, it just drives me nuts.
It's way overused. And like you said, the barrier to entry is so low, especially if you're just a real estate agent. No hate against anybody, but if all you're doing is you think you're going to get your real estate license, you're going to open some doors, make some calls, and make a bunch of money, sure, you can do that. But where is the satisfaction in that?
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to be so hard to grow that business because time moves.
Yeah.
And I am in that stage of my career where I have done multiple deals with the same investor. I have done multiple deals with the same retail person where they bought a house with me and then they sold a house. Right. So if you do someone dirty, be sure that the time's going to come that they're going to hire a different realtor and be like, you know what? My first realtor kind of sucked.
Yeah. They
just got me to buy this house where like the area is not growing or like something's wrong with the house, and they weren't a good realtor for me. And a good realtor checks a lot of different boxes and does a lot of things for their clients during the process, and you know that.
Oh yeah.
And what I've also recently started doing is, with my experience, I will consult with my clients on what they're flipping, where they're flipping at, and what they're doing. And what I have started to notice is that there are so many holes that I have seen because I've had great deals and I have shit deals, right? Like we all have. And so I'm like, guys, we need to figure this part out before we buy this project, or we just shouldn't buy it at all.
Yeah.
And the famous saying of, oh, if the numbers work, we'll do it. I'm like, no.
I like that because I've completely changed that mindset over the past year, especially in a higher rate environment. Like I'm looking for really good areas.
Let's talk about that because I have moved my strategy too, and I'll talk about that in a second. But one of the questions on Instagram was, we never even got to it. One of the question was that since you've been, I think this person probably knew you, since you've been flipping for a minute, how has your strategies changed since like 2020 and 2021 where you could just buy and flip anything and make money versus now where I'll let you go. I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I guess to your point, like if the numbers worked on paper, I bought it. And I did really well in some of the areas that are now kind of coming up. So like Old Hickory, Madison, South Nashville, south of Woodbine. I've done well in Antioch. But a lot of those areas, they're really slow moving now. And they're, especially the price range or the out price I was in, like the 400,000 to 500,000 range. It's a very income restricted range. So when rates went up, that automatically took a lot of home buyers out of the market because they're on fixed income. So if you're in, the $1 million to plus price point, you're dealing with a different caliber of buyer and clientele that they probably don't actually need bank financing. Or if they do, they're very, very strong on paper. So like if they can afford 1.2, they can probably afford 1.6. Whereas the person who's approved it for 50 really can't afford, 475.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing that I noticed over the past year or two. And just part of my strategy now, or changing my strategy, is just to look in like higher quality areas or more affordable areas. So if I can get the out price under 350, that's good for me. Or if I can get the out price like 900 plus.
That's really good because at 350, just about anyone can buy that house.
Yep.
Right? Like 90% at least. People who can buy a house can buy that house. For
young couple, like you give them $12,000 in closing costs if you've got margin, and buy their rate down for them. Like you can make the numbers work for a lot of people. Whereas 400 to 500, 600, like I think 600 to 700 right now is the worst range.
Is the toughest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing about your strategy is the location that you're doing it at. You either want to be available, like your product is available to just about anyone who wants it, or you're going 900 plus where it's almost, I would say $1 million plus in Nashville is luxury. Although I'm seeing a lot of products out there that are at $1 million, but they're okay. Like they're a nice house in a nice location.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that has changed for me too, is that I have bought deals. So I've always been blessed with being paranoid about my deal not selling.
Sure.
So I always bought in an area knowing that, okay, this is a good area, it's going to sell. And the only ones that didn't work out, well, one of them was just a full concrete house, dude. I shouldn't have bought it.
No. Well, like a block house?
It was a block house.
Oh, yeah, no.
I was buying everything in sight at the time. And believe this, you won't believe it, but believe it.
Yeah.
I fucked up so bad that I bought the house, not even realizing that it was concrete. And when my demo guys went in, there was just block all over in the house, and they were going at it with sledgehammers. I was like, guys, what's going on? They were like, it's all concrete.
Oh my God.
I'm like, wow. So that was the one deal that I lost money on.
Yeah.
But everything else was hardcore East Nashville, slightly like Woodbine. My first deal was in the Antioch, Nashville area. But aside from that, everything I did was in really, really good areas. And that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
With my clients, with everyone. I'm like, hey, if it works, if you want to hold it for 60 to 90 days after it's done, that's great.
Yep.
But if you actually wanted to sell, we need it to be walkable. We need to provide value. We need to do a really good job with design.
Yeah.
You can't no longer rely on just yourself and 20 minutes of picking finishes. No, like you actually have to put in the effort. You have to be in the deal.
Yep.
One thing I realized, because I sat down and I kind of took I can't figure out what the word is. I tallied up my past deals, and I saw which ones I made the most money on and which ones were just like, we're making 20K on a flip. Because like my average margins were 50,000 per deal.
That's good.
And so there were some that were like 25, 30, 35, and there were some that were in the six-figure range. And the biggest thing I noticed was the ones I was most involved in, the ones I would go see all the time. And this worked for me. If this doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you.
Sure.
But the ones I was most involved in gave me the most satisfaction, gave me the most money, sold the fastest, versus the ones that I just bought purely because it was a good deal. I hated going to that house because I looked at it as a waste of my time because it was just a generic house. I mean, that's not how you should be looking at your investments.
Definitely not.
And so moving forward now, the deals that we do, I'm like, it has to be a fantastic location. We either have to have, or we have to be able to put something that's just beautiful and immaculate about that house, or just a value add that people are like, I want this.
Yeah.
Because we don't buy what we need.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all buy toothpaste.
Yeah.
But we buy what we want.
Sure.
Because I came to this conclusion, I don't think we humans really know what we need. Aside from the basics, we don't really know what we need, which is why the great inventors of our time were able to create things in opposition from other people and still know that they're doing the right thing. Like, I mean, obviously Elon Musk is an example, but I found out Henry Ford, when he was building cars, dude, you're not going to believe this. You know what people told him? They told him that they wanted a faster horse and not an engine in a car.
That's funny.
His clientele legitimately was like, hey, we need faster horses. Why are you building a car?
That's funny.
So glad he didn't listen to them.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So same scenario here. We want to build products where people are like, I want this house. That what it's giving me for the money, I want it.
Yeah.
So that's been something that we've been really, really focused on over the last, and we talked about, we're starting up on a project in 12 South. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
Going to be very deeply invested in that. It's
right next to, be a big project, huh?
Right next to Lady Bird Taco. It's going to be a big project. Should be about a year
Yeah.
A year, maybe a little over a year. I mean, permitting alone is going to take 3 months.
Yeah.
So
it's historic, right?
It is historic. It is historic. So going to be working with a lot of historic architects, not a lot, just like one architect and one designer.
Yep.
And all that. But for me, I found that I really like that side because I want to be involved.
Yeah.
And I want to love what I do, because that was a big realization over the last 2 years. I don't want to do anything that I hate.
Yeah.
Because that's why we're business owners and operators, right? Because we started to do this not because we wanted another job that pays well, but it's still a job. We wanted to have the real freedom over our time. And we wanted to have just an actual life that we love.
Yeah.
Not just something we do for money. So I want to go into this next segue of, you're six years into your business?
It'll be 6 years, August 1st.
It'll be 6 years. I want to kind of divert attention to the people that are in their second year, maybe third year of their business. And as they're bringing in revenue, and this is a real question, as they're bringing in revenue, how should they be managing that? Because 95+% of business owners right now are business owners and operators, and they don't have a CFO. They can't afford a CFO.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, I see a lot of them not managing the money well. Like the money comes in, sure, you pay taxes, and then you spend a bunch.
Yeah.
But then you kind of end up with not keeping a lot of the money.
Yeah.
So like, tell us more about what processes, systems, or what kind of triggers you have in place in your business to like keep more money than, and you know, the basic standards. Yeah.
I guess for me at this point, I'm trying to hold whatever I can as far as properties go. Because honestly, the most money I've made on stuff and the best taxable benefits I've gotten is from just holding on to stuff. So if I can hold more, that's something that's a goal of mine right now. But for people who are 2 or 3 years in, if you're doing really well and, you know, you hit an awesome wholesale deal and, I don't know, make 50, 60, 100 grand, whatever it may be, I would just immediately put that into a project, like every bit of it. Other than what you need to live on, like keep driving the paid off car, like don't, you know, go out and party every night. Just be smart about it in that way. Like don't get caught up in the fancy things, because they'll always be there.
Yeah. How do they do that? Because I know people who have the fancy things, and I also know that they have worked really hard. I also know that they've put away a lot of money, and I also know that a lot of them paid cash for their vehicles.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And so, but it's so hard for that, right? Because they didn't see the 5 years of hard work before they actually, you know, were able to buy the fancy car or do something like that.
Sure.
So for a new person, what's a good piece of advice? Because I have one too, but what's a good piece of advice that you would say in order to, when they see something like that in person or on social media, how to like keep their focus straight? Because focus is the most important asset they have.
I'd say this, like nothing you buy is actually going to like make you feel that much better. You could buy the nice watch, the nice car, whatever it may be, whatever your, you know, choice of fun is, but you're not going to get satisfaction off of it. So like whether I buy, you know, a $200 pair of jeans or Wranglers at Walmart, like they do the same thing. So long term, I would just say, just understand that you're not going to be fulfilled by that. Like the shiny car syndrome or the shiny object syndrome, like wears off pretty quick. You know, like once you actually have it, you're like, okay, it's just another thing that I get in every day and go to work. So, I just say, like, don't get caught up in all that. I mean, it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like my car and, like to go out to nice dinners, but if you're going to run a business, then the first couple of years, like focus on putting money back, you know, maybe buy and hold a couple rentals, try to stabilize yourself for worst case scenario. You know, don't, if you're renting, like own a house, you know, go flip something, move into it, hold it for a couple years.
Yeah.
Put put your money back into real estate, honestly. Just hold on to it.
I agree with that. That's been another thing that I've realized over the last year or two, that destinations are not going to make you happy. That once I get this car, once I have X amount of money, once I do X amount of deals, once I know X amount of influential people, that can be part of your journey.
Yeah.
But our happiness and our satisfaction cannot hinge on those things, because like you said, that it's going to wear off so quickly, and then you're like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
and then you're in a cycle of loop. Like, I see a lot of people, and this is especially on the realtor side of things, that I know so many realtors who make like $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and they own zero real estate. Zero. Wow. They own one house.
Wow.
But they make $400,000 or $500,000 a year selling real estate.
And are they ending up just paying a bunch in taxes and spending it all?
Yeah, they spend, $150,000 a year in taxes. They're not being savvy with their money. They're not flipping anything. They're not buying anything else. They've got nice cars and nice watches and things and nice suits, but they're just not reinvesting it. And they're also not scaling the business. So like, they're not building a team. So it's like at a certain point you cap out, right? Like, whether that be in wholesale or building or whatever, like until you start building a team, which is going to take a lot of capital and time and effort to do efficiently, and it's probably going to take you a few years to do that. If you're just doing it on your own, like there will be a point where you're maxed out. Like your time's maxed out, your money's maxed out. You can only reinvest so much, and you're just going to hit a plateau.
That's a great point. I think that comes from a lack of education and a lack of willing to educate. I would say a lack of the willingness to learn more and to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
Because everything we have right now, like this building, cars, the concept of money and having money and storing it in a bank is extremely new to humanity. We were basically living in forests and like living in tribes up until a few thousand years ago. And then we went to when you go to like older cities, we all were basically peasants / citizens. Like if you're not a king, system. You're just like a normal guy.
Yeah.
And you don't have that much money. You don't have access to that much money unless you're like in the king's system or like the jurisdiction or whatever. And so I think it's extremely crucial to continue to educate ourselves on money, keeping money, on how basically life now works, because it's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And not be hooked in by social media or someone's bullshit drama or something that's not relevant to us. I think the need for education is bigger than it has ever been. And I mean, we can go down so many government rabbit holes, but I feel like we should keep that conversation.
Talk for hours on that.
We should keep that conversation to something where we'll have like a membership to where not everyone can hear us, because there's
I'm sure I have opinions that would offend lots of people.
I'm
okay with that.
I have so many opinions, and I feel like, hey, just like everybody, I think my opinions are facts.
Yeah, sure.
you know, like all the research I've done and all the deductions I've made from that, I think that's true. All of that is true. But no, I think educating ourselves is one of the most important things moving forward for humans. In understanding how the system really works.
Yeah.
And how certain events happen around us simply to distract us. And that's it, just for that reason.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Or how, Or
it's easy to get distracted. I mean, I think for young business owners, that's probably the hardest thing. Like and going back to my point earlier about, making $40,000 a year, and then it's like you see $80,000 in your account. Like if that's the first time you've ever seen that, you actually don't realize how small amount of money that is. So like if you're a wholesaler, you're doing whatever, like, and you make that first 20, like you've probably never seen 20 grand before, but then you make 200. It's like, then you start thinking about, okay, like what about 2 million? Like what's 20 million look like? But all of that comes from systems, processes, and really just being frugal overall and kind of keeping your lifestyle the same. You kind of got to be happy with what you got.
Agreed. It's more so a system that makes money and like you said, process like building instead of having money appear in front of you like it's magic.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you've been following a system, you know that you'll consistently be able to make X amount of dollars versus if you're just trying to get a, bigger deal.
Chasing the next deal.
Chasing the next deal.
Or the next client, whatever it is.
It's just like you're trying to perform magic over and over again. And how, like, you're going to get tired, you're going to get sick, you're going to want to take a vacation. There's going to be so many changes. And I mean, think about what happened to the German currency when they switched over to the euro. Everything got cut in half. If you had 200,000 in your bank account, guess what? It's now worth 100,000.
Yeah.
So I think we humans forget too quickly. And again, that 80 grand amount, when it comes in, so many people will instantly go out and buying things versus you gotta keep it. You gotta keep it secure. You gotta keep it in.
Oh, I've seen it happen to clients who, I've sold a house to, and 3 years later I sell it for them. They walk away with, 50, 60, 70, 80 grand or whatever it is. And like, before you know it, they're back to renting and working their day job. And, you talk to them a year later and they're like, I had a couple good vacations or,
bam,
bought a nice car or whatever it is. And then they go back to owning nothing.
Yeah. Because cash dwindles extremely quickly. Very. Assets don't dwindle assets don't dwindle really.
And we're in a very cash heavy business. It's very capital intensive to be in real estate.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I mean, getting to 100,000 or 200,000 is a challenge. And once you're there, it's like, that's your nest egg, whether that's in your equity or in cash. A lot of people fuck it up, but
moral of the story, keep more cash.
Yeah.
Put it into assets. Even if you're buying gold bars, who cares?
Yeah.
But still buy assets instead of spending that cash or putting that cash into a savings account. And really take advantage of compounding, which is just here for you.
Yeah. I think the best thing people could do is if you can buy a property and get a line of credit against it, that's like the best way to keep your cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Ian, this has been an amazing conversation.
I appreciate you for having
How
me.
do people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, The Real Estate Agent. So it's like real estate, but SKATE. And that just comes from my background in skateboarding. I just thought it was kind of tongue in cheek whenever I started Instagram.
We had one of the guys also asked a question. They were like, hey, what are some of your cool skating tricks to impress the ladies? That was a legit question.
That's funny. I mean, I'm sure there's videos on YouTube of me skating, but
are there? Okay, I'm gonna do that. I did not know that. I'm gonna go watch them.
Yeah, there's definitely one that's probably 10 or 15 years old, but there's stuff on my Instagram too, but I don't know. You can name a lot of tricks. I could probably do quite a few of them.
Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna text him after this. I'm gonna be like, go to YouTube, Google Ian Ratliff skating.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll come up. Yeah.
It'll come up. I love that.
Yeah.
Ian, thank you for this episode. Thank you for talking to us. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for your time. Guys, we're going to wrap up this episode, and I'm going to see you in episode 3. If you like this podcast, if you like this conversation, I want to ask you to share it with someone who you think will find value from this. Until next time. Bye.